The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
The Rams are letting Matthew Stafford's agent talk to other teams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So that is the number one storyline for the Rams this offseason. Will Matthew Stafford sign a new contract with the Rams to hopefully retire in the Horns, or will the Rams look to trade him and really rebuild as a franchise that enters a completely new era post-Stafford? Well, the latest today is that the Rams are letting Matthew Stafford's agent talk to other teams to get an idea about his value around the league, to gauge his contract value. Tom Pelissero of NFL Network, he was on Rich Eisen today, and he said, quote, "My understanding has been that the Rams have been in conversations with his agent, that they've also given his agent permission to talk to other clubs just to figure out, hey, if he becomes available, if there were a trade, what were the numbers be elsewhere? What would those numbers look like?" That takes care of multiple things. It takes care of, number one, what Matthew Stafford could get if we get to a trade, because you wouldn't be able to execute a Matthew Stafford trade without having a new deal in place. But also, it gives the Rams an idea and Stafford an idea of, hey, we're going to try to work together. Are we going to be able to work out a contract to keep him in LA? So I think first big takeaway from that is I think the Rams are handling this the right way. They're handling this like adults. There's not this big emotional side for Matthew Stafford's camp. You don't see him going to social media and going on all these shows and trying to make this big thing out of this. The NFL is a business, and they're handling this situation accordingly. Do both sides want to stay together and compete for more Super Bowl titles? I think they do. But they are both also doing their due diligence to make sure that this thing is handled in a way in which both sides feel good about their future together. The Rams feel good about the kind of contract they will ultimately sign him to, and then Matthew Stafford and his camp feel good about the market value that he's getting. So I think if the Rams are telling his agent, hey, we want to give you a new contract, $45 million a year. $45 million a year. That is my sweet spot contract for Matthew Stafford. I think the contract they should give him is 3 years, $135 million. But if there are teams out there saying, no, there's $150+ million deals out there from teams willing to pay him $50, $55 million. If that's the truth, and I'm the Rams, I'm saying, well, now we got to kind of think about what this means for the roster and the kind of talent that we can put around him. Because, yes, they have hit on a ton of draft picks. Yes, you have young emerging talent. But at the end of the day, about $37 million in cap space to work with this offseason. And Matthew Stafford is someone that's dealt injuries throughout the last couple of years of his career. Now, he has been durable and he's been ready when it matters most. That is in the postseason, and that's where I think this really comes down to is, hey, he's played in 7 postseason games for the Rams. They've won 5 of them, and he's played really well to great in almost every single moment of those games, right? I mean, he has been locked in and dialed in the playoffs, right? They won a Super Bowl with Matthew Stafford under center. But that is the number one question. How big of a gap is there from what the Rams are willing to pay him to what other teams are willing to pay him? Pelissero will go on to say, if you're trading for the guy and it's going to take a significant pick, let's just say it's going to be a second-round pick, you're going to have to want to know, am I getting this guy for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? And that's why the Rams have been willing to let Stafford's agent, Jimmy Sexton, who's very experienced in these matters, to go out and just figure out what would other teams be willing to do. So from the Rams standpoint, you also get to gauge the kind of value you could get for him on the open market. So make no mistake about it, this is the biggest story this offseason in the NFL from a player acquisition standpoint, really, if he does become available, because you have a Super Bowl winning quarterback that can elevate a franchise. And I think it's very apparent right now the Rams want to keep Matthew Stafford. They've already made that clear. Matthew Stafford, by all reports, trusts the Rams and their vision for the future. He trusts their ability to put together a contender. I think that you look at his family and his daughters and Kelly Stafford, they clearly have established their roots in Los Angeles. I highly doubt that they want to be uprooted and start a new life somewhere else. I think they're comfortable here. He's a star here, but he doesn't have to deal with things that stars in other markets have to deal with, right? Los Angeles, superstars can go out and you can exist and you can go out in society, right? I mean, I think they're comfortable here. I think they like it here. I think they like the lifestyle here. So I think that is something that appeals to them as well. But at the end of the day, the Rams are a very smart organization. They're not going to be desperate in trying to overpay or force someone into a situation that they don't think is the best for this franchise for the next 3 to 5 years. So you got to trust the organization. You really, really have to trust the organization. I see a lot of people in the comments, D-Mac, hey, he's still under contract. Why is this even a thing, right? He signed that big extension a few years ago. Yes, that is true. He does, by definition, have 2 more years remaining on his contract, but of those 2 years, they're just $4 million guarantee of his $49.6 million cap hit. And then in 2026, there are no guarantees in his contract. So this season, the past season, in 2024, they restructured his deal where they took all of that money and they pushed it forward. So he was playing essentially on a 1-year, $40 million contract, knowing that they would have to get back to the negotiations if they wanted for him to feel good about playing here moving forward. So they knew this. This is not something new. The Rams knew this. Stafford knew this, that they're going to have to get back to the negotiating table at some point if he was going to continue his career with the Los Angeles Rams. And ESPN's Dan Graziano, he reported last week that Stafford is likely to return. So that, I think, is based on a couple different things. And I've heard good things as well about this process just playing out, but Stafford ending up back with the Rams. And let's not forget how close this team is to contending for a Super Bowl. They were the surprise team that overcame all the odds a couple seasons ago to just get into the postseason and play a very competitive game against the Detroit Lions. You found lots of young stars. You had Puka Nacua emerge as one of the best receivers in the National Football League, and you picked him with your 4th pick in the 5th round. Guys like Kobe Turner and Byron Young, and these names just started to emerge. And then this past season, the same level of success with some of these young, I wouldn't say the same, but a lot of success from young guys that have continued to emerge as well that you feel good about. Guys like Jared Verse, most pressures in the NFL, even as a rookie. Braden Fisk, he looks like a dog that's going to help this team for a long time too. So there's plenty of examples of young players that look like key pieces in a Super Bowl run. Mind you, had the Rams whiffed on the draft and in free agency, we would not be having this conversation. We'd be looking at a down-to-the-studs level of rebuild, but because the Rams have done so well in the draft, they put themselves in a position where it makes sense to retain and move forward with Matthew Stafford, knowing that if you hit on some free agency pieces, if you hit on health and all these other factors, that there's no reason why you can't be in the Super Bowl mix with Stafford for the next 3 seasons. So I think that's what it comes down to, is the Rams have put themselves in a good position where this is just makes sense. I mean, for other organizations that don't have as great of player development and scouting and the ability to acquire talent like the Rams do, you might say to yourself, oh, it's time to move on, or we're just keeping Matthew Stafford because it's the most important position in football. He's a star and want to build around him. That's not the case for the Rams. If they didn't think he could win him a Super Bowl, this wouldn't be a conversation. If they didn't think that they had the roster in place to make a run at a Super Bowl with some other additions and things working out for him, this wouldn't be a conversation either. But there are reports out there that at the very least, NFL GMs are intrigued. They are intrigued. And this is from Daniel Jeremiah, who said, the Stafford stuff, I don't know if there's legs to it, but I know that it has a lot of people in personnel departments and general managers intrigued and seeing what's going to transpire there with him and the Rams. The fact that they just didn't come out and say he's not going anywhere has led people to believe that it's a possibility. So, sure, the Rams, if they wanted to, they could go out there and say that Matthew Stafford's not going anywhere. They're not going to do that. They're a very process-oriented organization. That's why they've had so much success. You can't make these emotional decisions with every single one of your players. You have to let the business side of this stuff play out. That's how you win on the margins, and that's how you're able to have sustained success. Just look at the 49ers last season. They were the media darling to win the NFC West. Everyone looked at the pieces, and they thought, okay, they're just going to run through the NFC and get back to the Super Bowl. Hasn't happened. The 49ers have done everything from a player acquisition standpoint to put themselves in a position to win a Super Bowl, and they've gotten very close, but they haven't done it. A lot of teams around the National Football League have tried to emulate what the Rams have done, but they skipped the part where they hoist the Lombardi Trophy. So the point is, the Rams strategy works in all this, so I don't think there is a reason for them to go out there and do something that would lose them any leverage, right? They shouldn't do that. Matthew Stafford needs to realize that the Rams give him the best position to win a Super Bowl. He doesn't know what it's like in other organizations right now. They could sell him on, oh, you could be the missing piece here. You could be the savior. How did that work for Aaron Rodgers, right? How did that work for other quarterbacks we've seen thrusted into situations? For every Tom Brady to the Bucs, you got an Aaron Rodgers to the Jets, right? Does anyone really believe that Matthew Stafford in year one with the Giants or year two with the Giants is going to win a Super Bowl? Would his chances be better with the Giants or the Steelers or the Vikings? Teams like that than the Rams? No, they're not. So I think if you're the Rams, you have to realize, hey, we're better at this than most of these teams out there in the National Football League. So, hey, we're a prize too, right? We're a prize too, right? So I think that's very important for the Matthew Stafford camp to realize in all this. Because, look, there's no doubt about it. He's been everything that they had hoped for really as a quarterback. Would they like to have a mobile quarterback at some point, as we talked about in the last episode with Les Snead's comments? I'm sure they would, but Matthew Stafford is one of those quarterbacks that is a little bit of a throwback. He's not old. He's classic. He's vintage Stafford, right? And I think that every now and then you're going to have quarterbacks that have arms that are so special that they transcend where the game is trending towards. And Matthew Stafford's arm is that special, for just being quite honest about it. You look at the numbers. He's thrown for 14,700 yards, around that with the Rams, 95 touchdowns, 44 interceptions in 55 games. He's been awesome in those 7 postseason games. They've won 5 of them. If you look at the numbers last season, they won't blow your mind. 3,762 yards, 20 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. But we know that when it's time to perform at the highest level in the playoffs, that Stafford brings you the chance to compete and win those games. I think, too, you could surround him with better weapons, better talent. Cooper Kupp just wasn't that guy last season. Colby Parkinson was a bust for the kind of contract they gave him. Higbee was out for most of the year. You didn't really have a dynamic tight end that could do anything. Kyren Williams is really good. He's not an explosive running back. Demarcus Robinson, really a role player type receiver. So that's another thing I think I want to consider. That's a conversation I want to have on Matthew Stafford is, hey, yeah, I know that you guys know how to draft and develop, but if we're truly going to continue this relationship, if we're going to continue this run together, I want to know that we got all the chips and we're pushing him to the middle of the table, because that's what a move would indicate to me if you bring back Matthew Stafford on a new contract is, hey, we're going back to a little bit of an FM picks type of era where we're pushing those chips in, we're taking off the watch, throwing it in the middle of the table, we're taking off the wife's earrings, throwing it in the middle of the table, we're taking the lien of the mortgage, throwing it in the middle of the table, because that's what this organization does. And they're not about playoff appearances, division titles, NFC championship game appearances, Super Bowl losses. Those things show growth and development for a young team for sure, but a team like the Rams that has a Super Bowl winning quarterback in the twilight, I guess I should say the sunset of his career in Matthew Stafford, who I still think has 2 or 3 really, really good to great seasons left in him, and some awesome playoff moments, and he has all the tools to accomplish those things. I think you got to be as all in as ever if you do bring him back. And I think that's what it's all about, because if you want to make inroads in Los Angeles and compete with the eyeballs here and continue to grow that prestige, and I mean, just look at the Eagles, right? The Eagles went from no Super Bowls to now you're like, damn, Eagles have 2 Super Bowls. Eagles have 2 Super Bowls. That is something that you can feel better about. You're part of that multiple Super Bowl club. And the Rams could go to that 3 Super Bowl club, 4 Super Bowl club, and then you just elevate, and you really plant your flag in Los Angeles saying, we are that team. We are that team in Los Angeles. The Chargers are here. They rent. But this is our home. And the foundation gets stronger, and that's why what I would see in Los Angeles. And I think it certainly starts with Matthew Stafford.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Monday night will feature some fun NBA action. You can get out on the Pacers are 4-point home dogs to the Nuggets. The Pistons favored by 1 in what should be a tightly contested match with the Clippers. That was my Midwest coming out. A tightly contested match. And the 76ers are 2.5-point favorites over the Bulls. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Indiana dominates Purdue inside of Assembly Hall.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Oh my goodness. This is raw reaction. The game just ended. I hit record. This is coming out to you as soon as I possibly can. Indiana upsets Purdue 73-58. And there were so many different trends in this game, and we didn't know what to expect in this game, right? Coming into it, you had the week off, right? If you're IU, didn't have the midweek game. Things were just not going well. Everybody seemed to just, kind of punt on the season and wait to see who the next head coach is going to be. But I've been telling you that we still had tournament hopes, right? The win against Michigan State was solid. Yeah, you backed it up with the loss to UCLA, but you had a few more chances, and this was one of them. And you take down Purdue 73-58, dominate the second half, and really play one of your best games of the year. And I think Mike Woodson, I'm going to start with him. I think he deserves a ton of credit in this game. There was a different game plan, there was a different strategy, and there was a different level of execution, right? You start talking about the guys that start this game: Miles Rice, Anthony Leo, Malik Renew, Luke Goody, Trey Galloway. Those are your starters in this game, with Mbako and Ballo coming off the bench. And Mackenzie Mbako didn't touch the floor in the second half. And Oumar Ballo came in only when Malik Renew got in late foul trouble, yes, but more of just, hey, I need a rest. You saw Malik on the bike a couple of times, and they played Oumar Ballo because they had to, not because they wanted to. And more on that coming up in just a moment. But this was your best win of the year. I thought the Michigan State win was fantastic. It was on the road, and one that I'm not going to say had to have, but one that was nice to have. This one at home against Purdue, you had to have. And I want you to think about this, right? Both games against Purdue have been close. You had every chance to beat them at their place when you went there just a couple of weeks ago, and you couldn't get it done. You come back onto Assembly Hall after a week off of games. That crowd was electric, and you give them something to cheer about, and that becomes one of the toughest places to play in college basketball. Some of the stats that jump off the page as I continue to say we dominated Purdue, because we did. We started out the game nicely. Purdue made a huge run, right? What was it? 21-3, 21-4, right? Was the run at the end of the first half. We're thinking, well, here we go. It's over. Purdue did what they do. It's over. We're down 37-25 at the half. Ain't no way we come back and win this game. And all of a sudden, here come the Hoosiers. For the first time this year, we decide to play with some effort and energy coming out of the locker room. 28-3 was the run to start this second half as Indiana ends up just running away with this thing, outscoring them 48-21 in the second half. Listen to that again. 48-21 in the second half alone. And it all started on the defensive end of the floor. Listen to some of these numbers for Indiana in this game. You shoot 52% from the floor. That'll get it done. Didn't shoot great from downtown, but you didn't need it. Why? Because you had 44 points in the paint. 44 of your 73 come from inside the painted area, compared to Purdue's 18. The game plan was simple. We're going to get down low. We're going to get to our big guys, and we're going to lay it in. We're going to get to the rim. We're going to get to the basket and make you defend us or make you foul us. And Purdue, in this losing streak that they've been on, they don't have interior defense. They've not been able to stop anybody inside the lane. And Malik Reneau had a great day. He had 15 points, didn't miss a shot, had just the one free throw attempt, but also had 6 rebounds and 4 assists in 24 minutes played, did Malik Reneau. It was simple. Indiana wanted him to be in the game, him to get the basketball, and nobody else needs to be involved. And yes, they had to get him the ball, but the game plan was give it to Malik and get out of the way. And that's exactly what they did, getting 44 points in the paint. But then to start that second half, yes, you got a bunch of points in the paint, but you also got good looks because you continue to turn them over. Man, Braden Smith was in hell all day for Purdue. One of the best point guards in the country was miserable for 40 minutes. And shout out to Miles Rice. Yes, Miles Rice, who I think played probably his best game of the year today altogether. His shooting numbers were not great, but he still got 12 points, still got 2 boards, had an assist, did not turn the ball over, and locked down Braden Smith, who, by the way, had just 8 points, 2 of 8 shooting, did have 5 assists, but he had 6 turnovers. That matches his season high for what I would say is most likely the best point guard, top 3 point guard in all of college basketball, and that is going out. That credit goes to Miles Rice, man. And that's what I've been saying all year. It starts on the defensive end of the floor. You play with high effort on defense, communication on defense. That was a big part of it too. When Purdue went on that run, we lost that communication. We lost a little bit of that edge, and that's when they went on their run to end the first half. We came out in the second half, completely different team. When you do those things, this Indiana team is good enough to win big games. Obviously, you just upset a top 25 team 73-58 in dominating fashion. You can prove, and we just did, that we are a good team. And then when you have good defensive effort and you have good defensive stops, it leads to high effective offense. And yes, a lot of credit goes to our offense, yes, but Purdue couldn't stop a toddler, man. They could not do anything in that second half. And one of the best halves we've seen all season long from this Indiana team. One of the best games we've seen all season long from this Indiana team. And we upset Purdue 73-58. The crowd was electric. That place was as loud as I've heard it all season long. And we may have just saved the season with a win over Purdue. Was it the best win? Absolutely. I think it was because of the rivalry, because of being at home, and because of the stakes of you had to have it.
The Houston Cougars might be a month away from the heart of March Madness.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars.
I went back to watch Iowa State a second time on Sunday afternoon. And I got to say, I weirdly left that one more encouraged than I might have been Saturday afternoon when the game ended in real time. For those that might not have clicked into it, Houston beat up Iowa State team. They did it 68-59 on Saturday afternoon. College game day is in town. Great time, right? And Iowa State was down their leading 2 scorers, one of which comes off the bench. I think it total accumulates like 32 points per game, like theoretically a lot. And so that Houston was in a close contest worried a lot of people. I think people concerned over yada yada. Couple things. One, Iowa State's one of those teams a lot like Houston. It was very visible in the second rewatch when you kind of know what's happening. You're paying attention to a few other kinds of details. A lot like Houston, frankly, a lot like Texas Tech, a lot like Auburn, a lot like Alabama. I haven't seen much Duke, but I think some like them as well. These top teams in the country where the culture is the biggest factor, right? And so you're playing a team down a couple guys, and it doesn't feel like it, certainly on the defensive end at all. Iowa State scored just 59 points. That might have been it, but the defense they played on Houston was just the defense they're going to play on everyone. Houston played a lot last year without Terrence Arsenault, the last part of the year without JoJo Tugler, and had to play a Sweet 16 game primarily 3/4 game without Jamal Shed. People weren't shedding tears for them. Texas Tech's been through their own kinds of stuff. Frankly, they played Houston without JT Toppin and won, right? We've seen teams overcome this a lot. This top tier of teams overcome things a lot. And so on the second rewatch, I'll get into something that stuck out to me in a second, but I got kind of caught up in I can't believe we're this close in the second half, whatever, live on Saturday. In a second rewatch, I think it feels a lot calmer to be like, okay, this is just that good a program, a lot like Houston's that good a program, a lot like, again, these top few dogs in the country right now are all those kinds of programs. Now, there was a stretch in this game where Houston could have put them away in a big kind of way and did not. With about 14, I have it written down here, 14-14 left in the second half. Houston scores to make it 45-29, and Iowa State calls a timeout. Come out of the timeout, and Lipsy, it's a 3. Then they come down in sharp travels. And then there's some back and forth. And then Uzan has a pass stolen away on the entry pass. Lipsy has a layup. Quick Tugler miss, ends up getting a foul going for the rebound. Surprise. And another sharp foul on the ensuing offensive possession for Iowa State. Baseline out of bounds play leads to a backdoor cut for an easy layup for them. Another turnover for Houston on a Cryer high post entry. Momcilovic hits a layup on the other end. These are consecutive possessions. Boom, 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 right? And that's several turnovers in a row. You end up getting down to a foul on, I think it was Sharp gets Momcilovic, and he's shooting free throws to get it to 45-40 with 11:20 to go. That's roughly a third of your season high turnovers. You had 17 turnovers on Saturday, and roughly a third of them come in this 3-ish minute window when you were up 16 and the lead is cut down to just 5. That's a moment you could have sunk them. You could have taken the lid off the Fertitta Center, really blown that game out the window. Instead, Iowa State hunkered down, turned you over a bunch of times, and got the game back to just a couple of possessions. And did you eventually extend the arm and keep them away? Yes. Were you able to kind of put the game away at the end with a big LJ Cryer performance? Yes. In fact, it felt like the solution once Houston calls a timeout just after that 11:20 mark, the solution looked like to me was Houston goes, okay, we're not doing a bunch of this passing stuff anymore, because the more they're moving the ball, the more they're turning it over, right? They set up in a couple space and pace kind of motions, maybe waste some, dribble out some clock, space out, kick it to one pass, Sharp, Cryer, etc., and let that dude work. Once it was clear that it was going to be Cryer's kind of day in that situation, Cryer became that guy. Uzan also, I think, Uzan was super aggressive in the first half at 14 points. And it felt like in the second half, once he was turning the ball over, he got a little bit more timid with it. It felt more like November Uzan, frankly, if being really honest. And then suddenly there's a moment after that 3-minute stretch where he was like, screw it, I'm going to go to the hole. And he attacked the rim, right? He got the rim and a great left-handed layup, finish over the top. Frankly, really great left-hand layup, given the fact that he had a floater blocked earlier in the half. And then the next offensive possession is big, 15-foot. He steps back about 15 feet backwards behind the 3-point line for a big step back 3. And that kind of got his swagger back a little bit. You kind of saw his body language change a little bit after that. Again, seeing the second time, knowing what's coming at the end of the game, it's very clear that was kind of a big moment for him. obviously Iowa State's defense forced those turnovers. So I don't mean to say this as if like not to give credit for the other team or whatever. I do think that had Houston even played just like even keel trading baskets basketball for that 3-minute stretch from 14-14 down to about 11-20, you're looking at a blowout of a game. And I understand that like 3-minute stretches are part of it, right? But ultimately, I think that was the moment where I was hoping for a Houston blow the doors off this thing, would have settled for keeping it at about a 15-point lead the rest of the way. And instead, Iowa State came back and made it a game on great defense out of Lipsy, great defense out of Josh Jefferson, and great defense and great scoring out of Momcilovic. Now, I will say, like, Lipsy and Jefferson ended up with a bunch of steals. I think Jefferson had 7 as a power forward because of those kinds of troubles Houston was having getting the ball into that high post in the 15 to 25 foot area. Both Lipsy and Jefferson were able to get a bunch of pokes and steals in that. I'm sure they're drawing stuff up to fix that and having different fixes or whatever. I can go through what I would intuitively do, but I think it would be more interesting to see what they do Monday night against Tech, because Tech's a great defensive team as well, and they'll have something drawn up to kind of counter that, I'm sure. I will say that ultimately this was a gritty, gutty win that Houston's going to look back on, I think, in a good kind of way, moving forward. As I look forward to Tech this weekend, again, all of these top-tier programs in America have had wins and had, tough games, et cetera, without top guys. And so I don't think they're going to dwell too much on that as they get into Tech on Monday night.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Monday night will feature some fun NBA action. You can get out on the Pacers are 4-point home dogs to the Nuggets. The Pistons favored by 1 in what should be a tightly contested match with the Clippers. That was my Midwest coming out. A tightly contested match. And the 76ers are 2.5-point favorites over the Bulls. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So we were both at the Bama-Kentucky game yesterday. Bama gets a win. It's funny, Michael Southern, who I went to the game with the other day, Tide Hoops History, go give him a follow. His seats were like 2 seats in front of me. The game starts. Alabama's down 20-9. We score the first bucket of the game. Then the next thing you know, we're down double digits again. And I look at Michael and I'm like, are we going to quit doing this? And so from that point to halftime, and I'm doing quick math, so bear with me, we went on a 38-20 run. Now, some people may say that's not really a run. A run is when you're like 18-2 or something. But we outscored, I guess I should say we outscored them 38-20 because I think the halftime score was 47-40. And then we go on to score 96 points. It probably could have been close to 100 if, we weren't sort of dribbling the ball out. But at the end of the game, but a good win. It's Mark Sears is finally finding his place. Nate Oates has talked about it. He's gone from the primary ball handler really to off-ball kind of guy. And that's great because he put up 35 against Missouri and what was a terrible output for the team overall, but he puts up 30 in this game. We can talk about some of the boneheaded moments in game a little bit later, but right now I want to heap some praise on these guys. We talked about Cliff Omori that, hey, we hadn't been getting enough out of him. So what does he do? Give us 11 and 15, and he's going against some 7 foot 13 foot gargantuan dude from, when when they show, all I could think was like, is the giant from is Goliath from the Bible? Was he from like Nottingham or something? That's who he kind of reminded me. That guy was monstrous. And kudos to the students for the USA chants during this.
Biblical history is not my thing, but I'm pretty sure no one from the Bible is from Nottingham. That's Robin Hood. But
knew it was something like that. I was close.
Robin Hood was,
But regardless, maybe the giant was from Nottingham and he just didn't play a big role in the Robin Hood story. But
the newest testament.
Huh?
Robin Hood would be the newest testament.
The testament, Cliff Notes. So anyway, but he was just so big. And I mean, he was a banger. And that guy was coming down and just he was looking for Cliff. He banged more with Cliff than he did with anybody else. He could have pushed a lot of people around, but he wanted to bang with Cliff. And he just pushed him around. And the student chant of USA, USA on his free throws, I thought, that's this. And also the four guys behind me who kept, every time he was shooting free throws, they'd go, beans on toast.
See, that's better. I think the whole student section should have done it. A terrible British accent would have been great from the whole student section. I didn't get the USA. I mean, we don't have an all USA team either. I mean, Cliff is
but we've never gone to war with Nigeria in my limited historical knowledge. We've gone to war with England.
That's true. That was a while back. That was more Old Testament history.
Hey, Minnesota still puts up their football national championships. I bet you that. So we're going to put up our war wins. And but yeah, that kid was big, and the four kids behind us they're like, beans on toast, shine your shoes, governor. That that it got me. I was like, yeah, I'd miss a free throw if I heard that.
That's good. How about Cliff with a hard hat last night? I think that's his first. And I think that gets back to the Cliff Amore story, right? I mean, you sign Cliff Amore not because he's going to be a great scorer, but because he's going to do all the dirty work, that he could potentially lead the league in rebounds and block shots and all these things that add up in Nate's hard hat points. But Cliff hadn't won a hard hat. Obviously, it's tough to win a hard hat when you got guys like Mo Diabate and Grant Nelson who are doing the hard hat things around the clock. But Cliff winning a hard hat, I think, was as good of a sign for this team as Mark Sears' explosive scoring. Mark now has 65 points this week. And I think those two coming around are huge, because now we're getting down to what just 4 regular season games left, Luke. This is crunch time. We're 4 games away from, okay, now you've got to play your best basketball of the year. So Cliff winning a hard hat, Mark scoring 35 and then 30. These are good signs that this March explosion we've been waiting on is just around the corner.
Yeah, and then Aiden Holloway, what was he, 5 of 12 from beyond the arc? I mean, and that's the way he needs to play. He missed a couple of open. There was one where he shook the Kentucky guard out of his shoes, and he stepped back. And if he makes that, the place goes nuts.
I know the play. That was what I said. If I told my wife that was the game with, I'm like, if that went in, that was going to be on SportsCenter.
I mean, it was just. And I'll tell you something else Amore did last night. I mean, most of his shots were dunks. And again, kudos for a double-double, 11 and 15 boards. And also just having to face off against that Godzilla of a human being that Kentucky has. But Amore caught a rebound, sort of like, it was almost Saquon Barkley-esque, where he caught a rebound and it was like it came to him over his shoulder. And then he just went up and dunked it one-handed behind him. I mean, do you know how hard it is to do that?
Well, I wouldn't know, actually.
No, I have no idea.
I have no idea.
I have zero idea how hard.
I assume it's hard. I don't know.
But then Aiden Sherrill. All right. I finally figured out what it feels like to me when Aiden Sherrill gets in the game, because I like him a lot. But I want y'all to bear with me, because I mean this is the most complimentary thing I can say. I've had 4 kids. It's like, and I grew up around a lake and swimming and all that. So it's like, your kids can swim, and kids can pretty naturally swim. But when you first put your kid in the pool and and they're like reaching for you, you're not going to reach back because you're trying to teach them. They panic a little bit, and then they sort of get it. And you're like, okay, they're not swimming laps or anything, but they get it. That's how I feel when Aiden comes in the game, when Aiden Sherrill comes in. Like, it's uncomfortable. It's like, I'm like, oh God, but I got to let him go. It's like I have any power over it. But I'm like, I've just got to let him go out there and do his thing. And then I'm like, hey, he's not doing a bunch. He's doing enough. I was like, yo, what? I mean, I wanted to turn around and go, look at my boy. Look at my boy's out there swimming. and he's doing so. And then here's the most complimentary thing I can say. I think he only played 6 minutes, and it felt like he played double that.
Yeah, for a 6'11", I think it's strange to call a 6'11" guy young, but he plays young. He does. I mean, I think that's what you're getting at. He plays young. He hasn't had the minutes I think we assumed that he might get before the year started. But I'm convinced of this, and I think a lot of Cliff Amore, and I've been saying, hey, Cliff is going to be one of the reasons we achieve great things in March. I believe that. I believe Cliff Amore is going to be a huge part of that. But I also think this, even though we've only seen glimpses of it, when Aiden Sherrill is a senior, when he's been playing for 4 years, he's going to be better than Amore. He'll be a more impactful, better interior player than even Cliff Amore is now, which I consider a heck of a compliment.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Monday night will feature some fun NBA action. You can get out on the Pacers are 4-point home dogs to the Nuggets. The Pistons favored by 1 in what should be a tightly contested match with the Clippers. That was my Midwest coming out. A tightly contested match. And the 76ers are 2.5-point favorites over the Bulls. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
The Boston Celtics get a big win, an easy win, a big response, a championship response. Well, it's a 13-point win. It was not a 13-point game. They went up by 27. Now that 27-point lead got cut down to 24, and then it was back up to 21 pretty, I don't want to say quickly, but within relatively short order in the fourth quarter. And then the Celtics started taking like the 24-second violations, and the Knicks just kept shooting, kept trying to. I don't know. Maybe somebody bet a spread that, and they needed to. I don't know what that was. The Knicks. They just. I appreciate the Knicks. Maybe a never say die attitude or whatever, but they need to have a better grasp on reality. The reality is the Celtics are back, and the Knicks are nowhere near as good as Boston. They are just not as good, and they're just not as good as maybe the best teams in the East. Like the Knicks made a big splash with the Karl-Anthony Towns acquisition. Did that get them to, did I say top three? Top two teams in the East, top three teams in the NBA. They have not beaten the Celtics. They have not beaten the Cavs. They have not beaten the Oklahoma City Thunder. They looked bad in the first half against the Celtics here in this game. They had a run in the third quarter where the Celtics, they got up 27 and they let up, and they gave the Knicks an opportunity to kind of come back and take advantage of things, right? Like Karl-Anthony Towns started hitting a couple of shots, and I was joking around like Karl-Anthony Towns must lead the NBA in scoring after his team goes down by 20. He just started to finally be aggressive, finally get some shots. The Celtics, I think, let up a little bit. And this is where the Knicks are. Like, the Knicks are good enough to torch a bad defense. They're not good enough to beat a Celtics level defense, and they cannot stop a Celtics level offense. That's for sure. Like, they sacrifice their defense in a big way to get the offense, and their offense is still not good enough to make the Celtics sweat, and their defense, the Celtics picked it apart. So the Celtics, I think, like, whatever you want to say about that December, that early January, that little stretch where they struggled, they were, just above 500 or whatever, that is gone. I think the Celtics have a pretty solid answer to that. They've now won 5 straight games where each of their 5 straight wins has been by at least 13 points. They've won 9 of their last 12 of their last 15. They've beaten the Knicks twice. They've beaten the Cavs over the last 7 games. The Celtics are, I think you can say, back. All of the questions about the swoon, I think those have been answered. The Celtics, I've talked about this a bunch. We've talked about it with Drew Carter. We talked about it with Tom Westerholm. We've gotten into the Celtics. Had a lot of things happen at the same time. They got Kristaps Porzingis back, and that took a little bit of time to get used to, just getting him back up to speed. Derek White had a swoon there. He talked about, very openly, I lost my joy, he said, for the game for a little while. And now that's back, and he's his normal kind of freewheeling, fun-loving self. And all of these little things. Drew Holiday is back. I think he needed to ease into the season. All of these things, like, the Celtics are back. Porzingis is back. Derek White is back. Holiday is back. Tatum's playing his best. Jaylen Brown, who wasn't feeling his best in this game, had a strong finish in the fourth quarter. The Celtics are back to their championship selves. And you saw that in them building the 27-point lead, where it was just attacking Karl Anthony Towns, attacking Jalen Brunson, getting whatever they want. The Knicks really spent a lot of time working very, very hard to get contested, tough shots that they couldn't really finish. The Celtics came down, and it was just a free-flowing offense, and they got basically whatever they wanted. They ran simple actions. They read the floor well, and, it's a Sam Hauser 3? No problem. He's wide open. Whatever it was it a drive? Was it a kick? Was it a multiple pass? Whatever it was, the Celtics just came down and did what they had to do. Methodical. Just, we know where we're attacking. Everybody loves to talk about that killer whale offense. We know where we're attacking. We know who the SEALs are on that team. That's the Celtics at their absolute best. Even when Jalen wasn't shooting his best or playing his best, he was doing other things, defending, passing. Jason Tatum, defending, passing, doing everything. 1 assist shy of a triple-double. This Celtics team against the Knicks, like, it's funny. I see the sentiment out there that, oh my God, the Knicks have to do everything they can to avoid the Celtics in the second round. Well, they're 3 games up in the loss column against Indiana, and I think 5.5 games up overall on Indy. They're going to have to really go into the tank to avoid the Celtics in the second round. If that's, assuming everything goes according to plan, the Celtics are very likely going to be in their path, right? They're not going to get to the conference finals without going through the Celtics. And they're not going to get past the Celtics. The Boston Celtics are just significantly better than the New York Knicks. And I think this game, like, the third quarter is the only thing Knicks fans can sit there and kind of hang their hats on and say, well, we at least had that. We had that stretch where, they outscored the Celtics by 20 points after, I forget, it was over the last 8 minutes of the quarter. And like, yeah, I guess you have that. I guess you do. But the Celtics also outscored the Knicks by 27 up to that point, and then outscored you by 17 after that before meaningless late quarter buckets to get things close. So I think this is the championship level Boston Celtics back in complete effect.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Monday night will feature some fun NBA action. You can get out on the Pacers are 4-point home dogs to the Nuggets. The Pistons favored by 1 in what should be a tightly contested match with the Clippers. That was my Midwest coming out. A tightly contested match. And the 76ers are 2.5-point favorites over the Bulls. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
The Cavs get another win, this one over the Memphis Grizzlies, and it's important.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Cleveland Cavaliers moved to 47-10 on the season with a win Sunday night. They beat the Memphis Grizzlies 129-123. They did so without Darius Garland, and winning a game against a really good team, which Memphis is a really good team. I don't buy them as title contenders, but they're 37-20. They're in second place in the West. They're having a really nice season. They've got a lot of really good players. We will talk about Jaren Jackson Jr. and his battle with Evan Mobley for Defensive Player of the Year. We'll dive into that. But beating a really good team without one of, I think there's a case that Darius Garland has been the best player for the Cavs this year, but winning a game against a really good team without that guy in the lineup, I think is a big accomplishment. But what I think is a bigger accomplishment for the Cavs is the way they won this game. Not that they won it without Darius, but the way they won this game without Darius. So we've come to know the Cavs as a team that is an offensive juggernaut, and they didn't have, I guess, a bad night offensively. They weren't really good offensively. They did not shoot the ball well. And that's the thing that stood out to me, particularly in the first half. So Max Strus hit a three-pointer to beat the halftime buzzer that, put the Cavs, I believe it put them up by 6 points at halftime. And that was the first three-pointer that someone other than Donovan Mitchell made in the game. Donovan at that point was 3 of 6 from beyond the arc. The rest of the Cavs were 0 of their first 18 from 3. And that means typically not good things for the Cavs. When the Cavs don't shoot the ball well, and this is not a Cavs specific thing, this is an NBA specific thing. When NBA teams don't shoot the ball well, they don't win because you need to score points to win. So when the Cavs don't shoot the ball well from beyond the arc, they're typically a much more beatable team than when, say, they're shooting 40% from deep, which is what we've become more accustomed to seeing because they are such an offensive juggernaut. So for them to have a game where they really struggle to shoot the basketball, they finished the night, and of course they had a better second half shooting than they did a first half because it would have been hard to have just as bad of a second half as they did a first half and continue to talk about a win here. But they finished the game shooting 27.7% from beyond the arc. They were 13 of 47. Donovan Mitchell had 4 of those makes on 8 attempts. So that means the rest of the Cavs were 9 of 38 from beyond the arc. Sam Merrill did hit 1. Ty Jerome hit 3. I will talk about Ty Jerome, the great night he had. Max Strus hit 3. Evan Mobley hit 1. Isaac Okoro hit 1. So it was just not a very good night for the rest of the team shooting the ball beyond the arc. And the Cavs are a much more susceptible team to a defeat when that's the case. And the fact that they were able to find other ways to win is really what stood out to me about this one. Because defensively, they were okay. They were not great. Memphis shot the ball well. They were 15 of 39 from deep. They shot 45% from the floor. But what the Cavs did in this game is they rebounded the ball. They rebounded the ball really, really well. Memphis came into the game as one of the better rebounding teams in basketball. They've got a lot of size. They start two bigs, just like the Cavs do. They start Zach Edey and Jaren Jackson Jr. I think they've got a little bit more size on the wing. Not that, Desmond Bane is great on the wing and doesn't have a super long wingspan, obviously. But I do think that they start a bigger starting lineup than what the Cavs starting lineup is right now and I guess tonight changes things because Darius Garland was not in it, but the typical Cavs starting five. And they rebound the ball really well. The Cavs are an average rebounding team. Kenny Atkinson before the season talked about wanting to put an emphasis on offensive rebounding, and that really hasn't necessarily come to fruition. And part of that too, when you have this conversation about maybe not rebounding misses as frequently as you would like, is the Cavs don't miss a ton of shots. Like, they're second in the NBA in field goal percentage. They are the best offense in the league. They don't miss a lot of shots. And when you don't miss a lot of shots, your offensive rebound opportunities, of course, are limited. Well, on Sunday night, they had 22 offensive rebounds. That was the reason why they won this game. They won this game not because they were a better team offensively. They won this game because they took more shots. They had 99 field goal attempts compared to 92 field goal attempts for the Grizzlies. And that was a really big deal in this game. It's not a game, I think, that they find a way to win unless they're able to attack the glass the way that they were. Memphis had 37 total rebounds. The Cavs had 57, so they out-rebounded them by 20, period. But the fact that they had 22 offensive rebounds in a game where Memphis had only 25 defensive rebounds. So the Cavs rebounded almost half of their misses, right? Like, that to me is the crazy thing, because that's not who this team has been. Jarrett Allen deserves a ton of credit for that. Evan Mobley deserves a ton of credit for that. He had 4 offensive rebounds. Max Strus had 4. Donovan Mitchell had 2. Dean Wade had 3. DeAndre Hunter had 2. Ty Jerome had 2. So it was a team effort. And to me, that is one of the things that stands out about this, is that when somebody goes down, and Darius Garland, and he was listed with a hip injury too for this game, but I don't think that it was really ever in the cards he was going to play. He was not present at shoot around when the media was let in on Sunday morning. He did not go through his pregame workout. Like, it was not some surprise when the starting lineup came out that, oh my gosh, Darius Garland's not in that. Like, this was not something that caught anyone off guard. But for the rest of the Cavs to step up and play the way that they did in his absence, especially by being able to do the little things, I think, to me, that's the sign of a really great team, because good teams can win basketball games. And we've seen the Cavs won a lot of basketball games. They're 47-10. But great teams can find ways to win basketball games in different ways. And that's what the Cavs did on Sunday night. They could have easily shot 40% from 3 and just outscored Memphis because they've got a lot of offensive weapons, and that's who they are. That, to me, would have been a little bit less impressive than what they actually did, because they had to to steal a phrase from what Memphis used to be, they had to grit and grind their way through this game. And that is something that you'd like to see the Cavs do. Not that they are going to win a championship doing that. Like, they have to play their best to win a title, and this was not the best style of basketball for them. But I think that you need to be able to win games in various ways, because guess what? When the playoffs arrive, whether it's against Boston in the conference finals, or maybe it's against Indiana, Detroit, or Milwaukee in the second round, or maybe it's even against Orlando, Miami, I don't know, Brooklyn, Chicago, Atlanta, one of those teams in the play-in currently in the first round, the Cavs are not going to be at their best offensively in every single playoff game. Like, that's just not a realistic thing to expect. Should they be more often than not playing really good offensive basketball? Yes. But every game? No, that's not a fair thing. That's not how playoff basketball works. So to be able to win a game like this is something that you would like to see be able to be something that can be translated to the postseason. We don't know if it can, but the fact that they can do this in the regular season, I think, should give you the faith that this is something that could happen in the postseason. They could theoretically win a game just like this one in the playoffs. And guess what? In the playoffs, when you win games, it doesn't matter how you do it. The only thing that matters is that you do it. Like, this was a really physical game. And I think that this, when you combine this with what the Cavs did on Friday night against the New York Knicks, where they just absolutely blew the doors off of New York, I think you have to be really, really happy with the way that this weekend went for the Cavs. I don't think it could have gone better. Of course, you would like to see Darius Garland not be injured. You'd like to see the Cavs play a little bit better offensively on Sunday against Memphis. But overall, the fact that they won two pretty big, important games, I think that when we, looked at going into the All-Star break and coming out of it, it's like, okay, there's a couple of tests. Those first 4 games coming out of the All-Star break, where it is not first 4, the first game not counting. So sorry, Brooklyn. But getting past that Brooklyn game, the next 4 games after that, so you got New York, you've got Memphis, Orlando, and Boston. You look at that as, okay, this is a little bit of a testy stretch for the Cavs. The fact that they're 2-0 through it and they've won 2 games in 2 different ways, despite the fact that, again, they didn't have one of their best players. They didn't have an all-star point guard. They didn't have a guy who I think should be an all-NBA player this year. The fact that they got a win like that against a team that is number 2 in the Western Conference. Is Memphis a title contender? I don't buy that, but they're a really good team. And the Cavs found a way to win this game in a way that, maybe it was a little bit more stressful than it should have been down the stretch. But overall, I think you have to be really, really pleased with that.